It's 10 o'clock. This is Sky News at 10, our top story. Eurostar says all services will resume tomorrow, but warns of delays after a day of cancellations left thousands stranded and New Year travel plans in tatters. Operators say the water level in a flooded tunnel near Ebbsfleet International in Kent, which caused the cancellations, has now been brought under control. Well, across the country, there are more than 100 flood alerts in place with a risk of tornadoes for some parts of the UK. Also tonight, Moscow says 18 people have been killed and more than 100 injured after a missile attack on the Russian border city of Belgorod.
As a child, I used to ask my parents, what are them initials at the end of people's names? And they used to say, don't worry about it, it's for famous people.
A railway worker amongst those to receive a New Year honour after saving the lives of several passengers. And Oscar-nominated actor Tom Wilkinson, best known for his roles in the Full Monty and Shakespeare in Love, has died at the age of 75. And we'll take a first look at tomorrow's front pages. That's coming up in our press preview at 10:30. Hello there, good evening. Eurostar says it will resume all its services tomorrow after thousands of travellers were left stranded today during a day of cancellations. Eurostar scrapped all trains in and out of London because of flooding in the Thames Tunnel in Kent, with passengers scrambling to sort alternative travel arrangements ahead of the new year. Well, services are now expected to resume tomorrow after the flooding was brought under control, but travellers have been warned to expect further delays. It comes as more than 100 flood alerts are in place across the UK. Sky's Thomas Moore reports.
Festive travel plans have once again been thrown into disarray. Dozens of Eurostar trains from London to the continent have been cancelled after severe flooding in a tunnel under the River Thames. Water was seen gushing from a pipe. Thousands of travellers hoping for a New Year getaway have been marooned.
It's getting more and more expensive every minute that passes. So we're trying anything from buses, trains, other countries, and going around a different route.
All the Eurostars are booked today and tomorrow, so you can't get enough of one. We looked at flights, they're all fully booked, so we can't get there now. We even looked at the Eurotunnel and drive in, but yeah, it's just impossible.
I think a lot of people that are stranded are worried where they're going to sleep tonight.
That's what the deal is with us. We don't really care. We stay another night in London. It's where we're going to get to
put our head, because it's booked up for the holiday, for the New Year's.
Meanwhile, on the other side of the channel, people couldn't get to the UK.
The main worry was that I'm not from Paris, so I was hoping they could at least cover some accommodation costs, and none of that was very clear. I still don't know if I would have gotten anything covered, so I've literally had to call up my friends or my family to find a solution to stay over, because no train's running today.
The weather has also caused disruption, with yellow warnings for wind along the southern coasts of England and Wales. Gusts of up to 75 miles an hour were forecast. There have also been yellow warnings for rain or snow in Wales and Scotland, a wet end to a wet year. Latest figures from the Met Office show it's been one of the top 10 wettest years for England and Northern Ireland in records going back to 1836. Rainfall maps show that compared to the long-term average, the southern half of England and parts of the rest of the UK have had 200% more rain. Just Western Scotland has had less rain than normal in an otherwise stormy year.
According to the Met Office, this is the fastest start to the storm naming season, with 7 named so far, from Agnes in September to Gerrit early this week. But that may not be that unusual. Just by naming a storm makes us more aware of it.
Forecasters blame the high-altitude winds of the jet stream for the storms tracking over the UK.
Usually the jet stream stays a little further north over us, so Scotland and Ireland, yes, they do see some rough weather, but England and Wales get away remarkably lightly. And particularly down in the southeast, you see, you sit there going, oh, it's lovely down here, but the north and the west don't. And that's just because of the usual placing of the jet stream, which this year has been a lot further south, allowing these storms to make more of a countrywide blow.
But the run of bad weather is coming to an end, with early indications of much colder conditions later in January. Another twist in Britain's variable climate. Thomas Moore, Sky News on the south coast.
Well, Sky's Ashna Hurnag joins me now from St Pancras in central London. And resumption, Ashna, of services, good news for those delayed, but presumably the backlog could take days to clear.
And for so many, it has been a day of disastrous disruption for people here at St Pancras, but across the continent too. But as you say, all services to and from London will resume tomorrow, which will be such welcome news after hours of misery that saw 41 trains cancelled from here in St Pancras, which meant journeys to Brussels, to Amsterdam, to France were completely disrupted, halted altogether. It meant that demand for other modes of transport increased drastically. The port of Dover saw no more foot passenger places being available on services to France, but also flights, prices of flights soared incredibly, with one ticket from Paris to London selling for £700. That was just a one-way ticket. But over here, the focus really will now turn to what caused this flooding within that tunnel. The Network Rail engineers that were working on it this afternoon said that the levels of water were unprecedented. They have managed, though, to pump out much of it. It means that one of those tunnels will reopen tomorrow, which Eurostar say which will mean that their services will be able to resume as normal, but that passengers should expect mammoth delays. Well, not necessarily mammoth, but it's likely to be, considering a lot of the people that have been told to go away today will need to come back tomorrow and will try to get rebooked elsewhere. They will also be running at quite restricted speed restrictions, which means those trains will be running much slower. So yes, services back to normal tomorrow, but there will be a knock-on effect from today.
Ashna, live in St Pancras, thank you. Moscow says 18 people have been killed and more than 100 injured in a missile attack on the Russian border town of Belgorod. Russia has accused Kyiv of carrying out the attack the day after a series of Russian airstrikes across Ukraine killed at least 39 people. And tonight, authorities say further missile strikes on the Ukrainian city of Kharkiv have injured more than 20. Sky's Europe correspondent Siobhan Robbins has this report.
In the Russian city of Belgorod, is this what payback looks like? Explosions rock a residential area. Shocked onlookers watch as a car burns. As smoke billows into the skies above this border city, Russian officials say this is the aftermath of Ukrainian strikes.
The Kyiv regime is trying to distract attention from defeats at the front line and to provoke us to similar actions. We emphasise that the Russian armed forces work only on military targets and the infrastructure directly associated with them. We will continue to do so. This crime will not go unpunished.
No one has claimed responsibility for this attack, but it comes a day after this. The biggest air assault on Ukraine since Russia invaded last year. A brutal attack on cities which killed and maimed indiscriminately.
It's pretty understandable that Ukraine wants to fight back. The one way it can do that is through drone attacks. We've seen a load of those reported by Russia today, and artillery and drone attacks against Belgorod, which is a military target. There are military logistics hubs there, and it's a good way of Ukraine being able to demonstrate that Russia can't have it all its own way.
As the war ticks into another year, Ukraine is under increasing pressure. Russia has seized territory in key locations on the Eastern Front. Yesterday's assault, a reminder to Kyiv's allies that the danger has far from passed. As 2023 draws to a bloody close, the casualties keep on piling up. Russia has vowed to punish those responsible for this strike. Fresh revenge to fuel this bitter war. Siobhan Robbins, Sky News.
Well, it appears that Russia's attacks on Ukraine tonight are not limited to the Kharkiv region. Just hearing that Ukraine's air defence systems are currently actively engaged also in the area around the capital, Kyiv. So we'll keep an eye on that for you. Now, a 23-year-old man has been remanded in custody after appearing in court charged with the murder of Chris Marriott in Sheffield. The father of two died after being hit by a car while trying to help a stranger on Wednesday. Hassan Django, who's from Sheffield, appeared at the city's magistrates' court this morning, charged with murder and 5 counts of attempted murder. 3 men have died and another is in a life-threatening condition after a house fire in South London. Police were called to the address in Croydon shortly before 11 p.m. last night and are working to inform the victims' next of kin. The London Fire Brigade are investigating the cause. Israeli airstrikes have hit 2 refugee camps in central Gaza. Residents in the camps of Nuseirat and Barej reported the strikes overnight. These latest strikes come as the health ministry in Gaza says 165 Palestinians have been killed and 250 injured in Israeli strikes over the past 24 hours. Tributes have been paid to the British actor Tom Wilkinson, who has died at the age of 75. He was best known for his role in The Full Monty and received the BAFTA Award for Best Actor in a Supporting Role for his part in the film. A statement shared by his agent on behalf of his family said he died suddenly at home. A station assistant who has saved 29 people from taking their own lives on the railway has been honoured with an MBE. The New Year's Honours List also includes a 9-year-old boy who's become the youngest ever recipient for his campaign against child abuse. And they join a star-studded lineup of the likes of Dame Shirley Bassey. Rachel Venables has more.
Never in his wildest dreams did Rizwan Javid think this letter would ever be sent to him.
As a child, I used to ask my parents, what are them initials at the end of people's names? And they used to say, don't worry about it, it's for famous people. And on Thursday, I went and I saw the MBE at the end of my name, and it was a feeling I can't really describe, honestly.
The duty station manager has been given an MBE for saving 29 people by stopping them from taking their own lives while he was at work.
They were at a similar age to myself, and I spotted them a few weeks later after we had the intervention, and she just came over and just hugged me, and she said, thank you so much for being there that day. If it wasn't for you, I wouldn't be here today. And I just felt like crying. For me, that person was family.
He's one of more than 1,000 people recognised in the King's New Year's Honours List. Among them, Tony Hudgell, who at just 9 years old has been awarded a British Empire Medal for campaigning against child abuse.
I was shocked because apparently I was the youngest person to get it.
How special do you think that is?
Really special.
This list always celebrates a mixture of local heroes, charity workers, campaigners, and much more famous faces, people recognised for their work in their various fields. This year, after conducting the King's coronation, Justin Welby, Archbishop of Canterbury, has been made a Knight Grand Cross of the Royal Victorian Order, while the novelist Gilly Cooper, Queen of the British Bonkbuster and friend of the Queen, is made a Dame. There are also honours for sporting legends, a CBE for cricketer Stuart Broad, an MBE for England goalkeeper Mary Earps, and CBEs as well for the former rugby players Rob Burrow and Kevin Sinfield for services to motor neurone disease awareness.
All of Europe is uniting forces against me.
And from the pitch to the big screen, director Sir Ridley Scott, behind Napoleon, also had his knighthood upgraded to a Knight Grand Cross. And she's the golden voice behind some of the most iconic songs in cinema. Dame Shirley Bassey becomes Companion of Honour, a title that can only be held by 65 people at a time. The Welsh singer said she was truly humbled. Rachel Venables, Sky News.
The UK's shortest-serving Prime Minister Liz Truss has been accused of cronyism as her long-awaited Resignation Honours List was revealed. In it, 11 people were rewarded, despite Ms Truss only holding office for 49 days. Our political correspondent Rob Powell has more.
Who gets a seat in here? How people are appointed to scrutinise laws and influence policy in the House of Lords is a constant source of disagreement. Liz Truss's decision to hand peerages to the political strategist Matthew Elliott, government aide Ruth Porter and Tory donor John Moynihan has renewed that row, with those campaigning for an elected Lords saying it's time for change.
We have more unelected politicians in Parliament now than we have elected ones. But of course, it's the system overall, the idea that Prime Ministers have this ability to choose who sits in the upper house with no accountability to the public at all.
Allies of Liz Truss disagree, with Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg telling Sky News honours are a reasonable way for Prime Ministers to thank colleagues that do no harm except for upsetting po-faced Puritans. But do they upset the public? The marginal seat of Dewsbury in West Yorkshire had its own famous baroness, so what do voters make of a Prime Minister giving out honours after being in office for a matter of weeks?
Well, that's ridiculous, isn't it? Yeah, no, I don't think she should. I think at least a year.
I suppose so, yeah. She was still Prime Minister, wasn't she?
I don't believe in the House of Lords, to be fair. I don't. How much they get paid per day?
They're all part of the same gravy train.
Tourists replace MPs in Westminster at this time of year, and with some big names overlooked by Liz Truss, the political reaction has been fairly mild. Opposition voices have made up much of the criticism, with the Scottish First Minister calling the list naked political cronyism. Labour said Rishi Sunak should have blocked the honours, but a government source said it was convention for sitting Prime Ministers to approve the peerages of others, including, as they put it, the dubious nominations made by Labour leaders in recent years. Labour has vowed to eventually abolish the Lords if it gets into government, but for now the party is less clear on whether it would scrap resignation honours lists.
You've got to look at the way in which you bring back a sense of dignity and integrity to the running of government affairs. And I think in Keir Starmer, you would have a Prime Minister of decency, of strength. He's certainly steely.
As the country counts down to the new year and the general election, all parties know the messages they transmit in the months to come will matter more than ever. Rob Powell, Sky News in Westminster.
Well, staying in Westminster, and the former Downing Street advisor Dominic Cummings has claimed that Rishi Sunak asked him to agree to a secret deal to help him win next year's election. Tonight, a Number 10 source confirmed there was a meeting between the two, but it was only a broad discussion about politics and campaigning. So let's find out more. We go to Rob Powell, who's in Downing Street for us now. And Rob, no hint then of a Cummings comeback?
Yeah, that doesn't look to be on the cards, but what has been revealed in this story, first reported by the Sunday Times, is that Rishi Sunak and Dominic Cummings have spoken since Rishi Sunak became Prime Minister. The story, or the Dominic Cummings account of the story, was confirmed by him online after the paper published their story. What he says is that the offer from Rishi Sunak was the same at both meetings, that he wanted him to come back and work in Number 10, albeit secretly, on politics and communications to help him grip government more effectively and ultimately to win the next general election. Now, Dominic Cummings says Rishi Sunak insisted it would need to be secret because news of his comeback would drive the media and MPs mad and cause him serious political problems. Now, Dominic Cummings says he refused this. He says he didn't want to work in secret and he wanted to focus on some of his domestic priorities, things like defence, procurement, national security and how broader government is organised. Now, tonight, a Number 10 source has said that these talks did take place, albeit they said they were broad discussions about politics and campaigning and that no job offer was made. I think there could be a couple of political ramifications from this for the Prime Minister, though. The first is for those on the right of his party who are closer to Boris Johnson, they may see it as more evidence of Rishi Sunak cozying up to someone that was instrumental in bringing Boris Johnson down. Indeed, Nadine Dorries, a Johnson ally, has already posted online today that this is proof of a plot that she's written about in a recent book to bring down Boris Johnson. Those on the more moderate wing of the party may question his judgment going to someone like Dominic Cummings, who many had deep reservations about his style of operating in politics. Labour has also already attacked Rishi Sunak this evening, saying that this is more proof that the Prime Minister is out of ideas. I think this, along with the reporting we've been doing this evening on Liz Truss's honours list, is sort of more evidence of political aftershocks that are being felt here in Downing Street from tumultuous periods that have taken place in the last few years, coming back to haunt Rishi Sunak and to potentially do him damage. And I think the challenge for the Prime Minister as we head into an election year is to try and figure out how to stop those aftershocks, or at the very least, figure out how to stop voters noticing them.
Rob, live there in Downing Street. Thank you. Now, Sky News has taken a dive into the deep blue to find out why there's a rise in reports of close encounters with sharks. The waters of Florida are warmer than usual, drawing more sharks towards beaches, and climate change could be to blame. Our US correspondent Mark Stone donned his wetsuit bravely and travelled the length of the east coast from Florida up to Nova Scotia in Canada to find out what's going on.
Developing right now a possible shark
Rare
attack.
shark attack.
Fresh shark fears off the coast of New York.
The headlines this past year would suggest that our encounters with sharks are on the rise.
In Florida, it's the shark bite capital of the world.
So what's going on? Well, this is a story about climate change that will take us the length of North America.
So we have our first bull shark just showed up right now.
And it begins 4 miles off the coast of Florida. Bull sharks have a terrible reputation. They are territorial and with little tolerance for provocation, intentional or otherwise, and so they are responsible for many of the attacks around the world. Our guide's instructions are simple. Remain calm, no sudden moves, and remember, we are not their intended prey.
Extraordinary. Far from being the pillars that Hollywood sets them out to be. They're shy, they're majestic, it's just remarkable.
These Floridian waters have this past summer been hotter than any other year on record. That is shifting the fish population, and with them, the sharks follow. And of course, with warm water and hot days, more of us are in the sea. From Florida to Nova Scotia, 1,500 miles to the north. This is where the scientists' focus now is. Dr. Neil Hammerschlag is a leading marine ecologist, drawn north from Florida because the waters here too have been remarkably warm. Sky News joined him here in the northern Atlantic on a new research project.
We got special permission to go to this location. We've been there now 3 days. We've seen great whites every day.
Over several months, he is attempting to tag the great white sharks and follow their movement.
You have a shark, you reach over, place it over his dorsal fin, and then there's a trigger, which then closes and this snaps onto the shark's fin, and the shark swims off.
And the antenna is for every time it comes to the surface, that will send a ping. And so you're able, over time, to be able to track its movement.
Yep, not only does it give the location, but also gives a temperature reading.
Dr. Neil has permission here to use bait to draw in the great whites. And his own footage from just a few days in the area is remarkable.
Places that were historically too cold for them are now becoming like suitable, and so they're going to go there. In recent years, just the number of sightings have increased. I mean, just 15 years ago, if you told someone I saw a great white, they wouldn't believe you. Now, people are seeing them all the time. They're spotting them, and what's the reason for that? Is it increase in great white shark numbers? Is it increase in prey population? Is it from the drastically changes in ocean warming?
Unlike Florida, here, for great whites, you do need a cage.
Well, you know, they're absolutely right. I mean, we're in the northern Atlantic and the water really isn't cold at all.
On our day, though, no sharks. Dr. Neil thinks that they've gone deep because of a rare incoming hurricane. And that is because these warmer waters are bringing more of them.
What you see here used to be have grass on it in the lighthouse just 10 years ago, and now it's barely any land visible. Isn't that mind-blowing?
And that's sea level rising fast.
Really fast.
There is more too. These northern waters are commercial fishing zones. As more sharks are drawn here, more are caught. Already, 100 million sharks are killed every year, a number set to rise. Far from being the danger to us, we are to them. In Canada, in Florida and around the world, we are encountering sharks more and more. All this is showing how their habitat is shifting. The ocean's apex predator keeps the ecosystem balanced and our seas healthy. Now, they're showing us how our climate is changing. Mark Stone, Sky News, in the Atlantic.
Let's catch up with the Saturday Sport now and head over to Jamie.
This Sky News Sports Bulletin is brought to you by Vitality. Getting more people more active. Live life with Vitality.
Take us back to June the 7th, ahead of the game, because you'd had such an amazing run to the final. Were you quietly confident?
I was, and I remember coming in and saying, how did the other semi-final go? And they said at the moment Baal's beating Fiorentina. I went, oh good, I think we might have a better chance against Baal than Fiorentina. And next time we come out, they said Fiorentina have won the game. I thought, oh my goodness, this is going to be much tougher. So I went into it knowing that, our record in Europe had been pretty good, we'd done okay, but this was probably going to be one of our biggest tests. And obviously Fiorentina, I had played against them before with Everton, and they had knocked me out in penalty kicks in the quarter-final of the Europa League. So Fiorentina maybe, I was worried that maybe, is it one of these bogey teams I've got?
When Said Benrahma scored the penalty there, what was going through your mind at that point? Did you start to believe this could be your night?
I always believed that we had a good chance of winning the game. When Said went up to take the penalty kick, he's been so good with them, I felt confident that we would get it. But I never knew how the game was going to go after that, and obviously they got back into it as well. I was more disappointed that we'd sort of lost a goal, and I thought in the end it wasn't a great goal to give away. So we had to go and do it again, and I'm thinking to myself, look, this is probably going to go to penalty kicks or extra time, and how's this going to go? I just felt that the game was going to be tight. I didn't think there was going to be an awful lot between the teams. There was going to be small margins quite often, which there is.
That moment when Jarrod Bowen gets that goal, when he's going for the goal, it must have taken forever to almost go. What was
I
going
can still
through your head
remember the feeling of that I was walking down as if to say, come on. And Jarrod was in good form, scoring form, and I thought, go on, he's someone who wants to score. It's a great moment, it really was, and look, one I'll remember greatly as a manager. For West Ham as a football club, brilliant moment, because let's be fair, I don't think West Ham have been round too many cup finals, and then to get one in Europe, even more special, and more importantly to go and win it.
There's a lovely moment as well when you put that medal around your dad's neck. What did he say to you?
My dad comes to games, he's been a great support, went to most of the games in Europe. My brother took him, and it was great that he got to see them at his age he is. And it was a bit like, it seemed that everybody was down at the pitch, and I saw my dad, so I just said, come down, I'll say hello, because I was more worried that maybe I didn't get to see him after the game, or just the whole thing get caught up, we didn't get a chance. So I came down and I put the medal around his neck, and it seemed to hit a note with quite a lot of people.
Oh, it did. And for you personally, I think that game was your 1097th. This was a major trophy for you. Was there a part of you that thought, I'm never going to experience that in this career?
Well, look, when you come to West Ham and you say, I'm going to win a European trophy, I think supporters of other football clubs would have probably laughed at that. But we have done, and we've gone on and done it. So I'm really pleased that we've been able to come and have some effect at West Ham.
This Sky News Sports Bulletin is brought to you by Vitality.
Jamie, thank you. Well, that was Sky News at 10. Coming up, we'll take a first look at tomorrow's newspapers in the press preview. Tonight, we're joined by the broadcaster and commentator, Ali Miraj, and the writer and broadcaster, Kate Bevan. Welcome to both of you. So, among the stories we'll be discussing, this on the front of The Observer, their headline, Starmer lacks a clear sense of purpose, says ex-policy chief. That and plenty more after this break.
I'm Mark Stone and I'm Sky's correspondent based here in Washington, D.C.
Well, the plan seems to be to head to the police station where the policeman who fired the shots was based.
And everything, his memories is all gone.
I've witnessed the remarkable passion for politics here, but the anger too.
We have to get Trump out of the White House.
I'm playing devil's advocate.
You've got your political agenda.
No, it's
honestly... God love you.
And beyond the United States, I report from around the world.
This is a town that is effectively encircled by the Russians.
We take you to the heart of stories that shape our planet.
I can hear now quite a few explosions in the distance here in Jerusalem.
What do you think of ISIS?
Everybody here, they know the truth of ISIS.
Five of us have made it out of the car.
Welcome to Backstage, the film and TV podcast. Well, this is Sky News. In just a moment, the press preview, a first look at what is on the front pages. First, though, some breaking news, and the New Year messages from some of the country's top politicians have been released. In his New Year's statement, the Prime Minister hailed a momentous year and vowed to build a brighter future in 2024. Rishi Sunak said, we're going further to grow our economy by reducing debt, cutting taxes and rewarding hard work, building secure supplies of energy here at home, backing British business and delivering world-class education. And we're taking decisive action to stop the boats and break the business model of the criminal gangs. From our incredible armed forces and NHS staff who take care of all of us, to our tech experts, scientists and innovators who are putting our economy at the global cutting edge. We should look forward, full of pride and optimism, for what we can do together to build a brighter future for everyone. Well, to the leader of the opposition now, Labour Sir Keir Starmer said, I'm ready to renew our politics so it once again serves our country. I know that politics isn't held in particularly high regard in Britain, but I have spent 4 years bringing the Labour Party back to service, and in 2024 we can do the same for politics. Meanwhile, the leader of the Liberal Democrats, Sir Ed Davey, also released his New Year's message, saying it falls to us, to Liberal Democrats, to be the agents of change once again and bring millions with us to make it happen, not just to beat the Conservatives through, though beat them we must, not just to change who sits in power, but to change where power sits. We must do nothing less than transform the nature of British politics for good. Plenty more of those New Year messages over the next hour in our press preview. Well, hello there. You are watching the press preview. A first look at what is on the front pages. In the next half hour, then we'll see what's making the headlines with the broadcaster and commentator Ali Miraj and the writer and broadcaster Kate Bevan. Welcome and great to see both of you. So let's check out the front pages, shall we? Starting with The Observer, who's been speaking to a former Labour policy chief who says that Keir Starmer is lacking a clear sense of purpose after straying from traditional party values and may not make one of its more successful prime ministers.
The Sunday Times has a poll which says 32% of people would prefer Starmer as PM, against 22% for Rishi Sunak. But the number of undecided, it says, gives fresh hope to the Tories. Daily Express reports that Rishi Sunak is planning more tax cuts in advance of the next general election to build what he calls a brighter future for everyone. The Telegraph, meanwhile, says the Conservatives are planning to use the next budget to force Keir Starmer to reveal his own spending plans, hoping to show that he'd push the country deeper into debt. Mail on Sunday claims an exclusive with news that hundreds of what it calls pampered Whitehall civil servants are now on contracts which allow them to work from home full-time. The Mirror says the government has commissioned a major poll to ask the public for their verdict on the future of the monarchy and says senior royals will be given the results. Happy Blue Year, that's the People's prediction for the New Year's celebrations, which it says are likely to be marred by a tornado, would you believe, floods and freezing weather. While the Star also looks ahead to the celebrations and says, wait for it, that 50 million drinks will be downed for what it calls Happy Booze Year, the wildest one for a decade. And finally, The Sun on Sunday tells us that in-betweener star Emily Attack is expecting her first child. Congratulations to her, of course. Now, a reminder, by scanning the QR code you'll see on screen during the programme, you can check out the front pages of tomorrow's papers for yourself while you listen to our guests. So let's head straight to Ali and to Kate as well. Welcome to both of you. And we kick off, don't we, with the Express, which is part of the New Year's messages we've had from our politicians, and the Sunday Express, Kate, picking out the bit that suggests there might be more tax cuts to come.
Yes, I mean, the Express is basically sort of full of possibly forlorn hope given the state of the polls. It's massively talking up what the New Year message says and what Rishi Sunak is hoping to do. I mean, it's talking in grand terms about the national insurance cut, which works out at something like £450 a head, and they're gung-ho about Conservatives insisting they can win the next election despite trailing in the polls, which John Curtis in the column next door points out is 16 points the trailing gap. So it's a big gap for them to close. And there's some speculation about what the date of the election is going to be. So yes, it's all very gung-ho in the Express, isn't it?
Look, I think Rishi Sunak has given a direction of travel. He has reduced national insurance by 2%. He is going to be under a lot of pressure now to reveal more tax cuts. We know that Jeremy Hunt, the Treasury, announced that the budget would now be on March the 6th. There's some speculation there'll be a May election. I don't buy that, quite frankly. I think Rishi Sunak is going to hold on for dear life to the very bitter end on this. So I don't see an election happening in May. But certainly he's going to be under a lot of pressure from wings of his party to cut taxes. Now, they've been kite-flying what these tax cuts are going to be. It may be national insurance. That might be a very aspirational thing that they're trying to do. We don't know, but there will be definitely more to come. But with the Tories 16 points behind in the polls, with that Rwanda plan going absolutely nowhere, we'll see what happens on that. A lot more problems to come. He's got another by-election coming up in Wellingborough where they're probably going to take another hammering, quite frankly, given what's happened before. It's looking pretty dire for the Tories at the moment. So I don't envy Rishi Sunak's job. He's trying to do his best in very difficult circumstances. But on the day when you've just had an honours list where Liz Truss, the summer internship Prime Minister, has put three of only 49 days. Come on, I know the government believes in internships, but there is a limit here. Three people in the Lords. I mean, come on. These people are going to be in the legislature for life. So the problem with the Tories at the moment is that they are a totally debased party. And I say this as a former Tory candidate, for heaven's sake. I take no pleasure in saying it whatsoever. We're being governed badly. Rishi Sunak's trying to do a decent job. He's a hard-working, credible, sensible guy. But he's presiding over a complete and utter debacle.
Yeah, it feels like they're flailing for ideas, aren't they?
Well, tax cuts is where they've landed on, possibly.
But also, the thing about saying that they're going to do tax cuts, it also highlights up actually just how enormous the tax burden is. It's the highest it's been for decades, isn't it?
But then what did we expect? There was COVID, where we had to spend... billions on that, 400 billion we had to spend on COVID. So people forget very quickly. The public are very unforgiving to politicians. It was only a couple of years ago when Sunak was being lauded as the Chancellor for introducing the furlough scheme very quickly. And now he's like, the key figure to be poked fun at.
Yeah, before we move on to the Sunday Telegraph, just the bottom of this story down here. Starmer's 5 big pledges for victory listed in his New Year's message, launching his bid, they say, to win power in 2024. They are
or include ending the cost of living crisis, taking back our streets, getting the NHS back on its feet, cheaper energy bills and more opportunities for children. They're even more generic than Rishi Sunak's 5, or even the Edstone. Do you remember the Edstone 5?
If you put them
back in the day, why do we need 5? Why is it only 5?
Oh, so if you put them side by side from both of those party leaders, you wouldn't know which was which, really. They're so, as you say, they're so generic.
Well, look, I think with Starmer, he's got two things going for him compared to 2019. One, he's not Jeremy Corbyn, and two, Brexit's been done, however badly that has been done. And it's only a minority of the public, about 6%, that think Brexit has actually yielded any benefits at all. So Starmer, yes, look, they're woolly pledges. They're not very well fleshed out. But if I was a Starmer advisor, I would say, don't at any cost flesh out anything at all. Keep it as vague as possible for as long as possible.
Which takes us to the front of the Sunday Telegraph, which is Number 10's plan to expose Labour's debt risks. The Conservatives, they say, are planning to use the budget to wrong-foot Sir Keir Starmer on borrowing to try to show that under Labour, Britain would go further into debt.
What made me chuckle about this, though, is that this almost basically says, look, we're expecting to lose the election and we're stuffed. We know we're stuffed. We're just setting bear traps. And if by some utter miracle they do win, the Tories are also going to be completely hobbled by this anyway. So, it feels like, again, an attempt just to throw things out in the hope that something sticks.
But does the nation want us to get more into debt now in order not to have another period of austerity? If we're going to get tax cuts, there's got to be a squeeze at some point.
Well, there's going to have to be a squeeze, and there's going to have to be a reckoning, and that's why I personally wasn't in favour.
At a time when public services clearly need investment.
Well, exactly. I wasn't in favour of tax cuts, although I'm a tax cutter at heart. I do not believe that now is the time or place for tax cuts. Not when you've got doctors striking, not when you've got the public sector writ large asking for pay increases in very, very difficult circumstances. Now, what they're doing here is that at the moment, the way that the fiscal rules work is that debt has to fall as a percentage of national income, as a share of national income over the next 5 years. What they want to try and do is look at the debt service costs as a percentage of GDP, and they want to impose a boundary on that too. And they believe that Labour is going to open the spending tax. But to be fair to Labour, they've not said anything about spending at all. In fact, we're streeting the shadow Health Secretary. He's been actually saying it's all about reform. He's been going around the world. He was in Singapore the other week, right? Talking about we're not going to have lots of money. He wants to make it more patient-centred. He wants to make it more preventative. But he's saying you can't solve these issues by simply splashing cash. So the unions in the Labour Party better wise up, because there's not going to be lots of spending tax being opened up.
I mean, what is fascinating about these New Year's Eve newspapers is how political they are.
Very political.
Which makes you realise what a big political year it's going to be.
Huge.
So we continue, I'm afraid. The Sunday Times. Come on to matters, Sue, as well. It's just a sort of a cheery time of year. But anyway, Starmer beats Sunak head-to-head. 32% prefer the Labour leader, while 22% back the Prime Minister Rishi Sunak. I mean, this is difficult, isn't it? When the PM's been constantly clobbered and Sir Keir Starmer's doing that thing in politics where they say just going small, don't they? This idea of just, keep a low profile.
Yeah, I mean, even in... this polling is actually pretty disastrous for Starmer, because even in his own constituency of Richmond, North Yorkshire, which is Tory territory, they're saying they prefer Starmer as leader. So, I mean, I think that, barring all sorts, barring upsets that we can't possibly foresee, Starmer is going to be out at some point next year.
Sunak. Well, Starmer might be out too.
Well, Sunak, you never know, do you? No, Sunak is going to be out next year. Goodness me, it is late, isn't it, at the end of the year? But, again, there's a 10-point gap there, just in who people prefer.
But Kate, it's interesting, because no one is enthused by Labour whatsoever. Every time I do a phone-in on my show about Labour, no one wants to call in. It's the most boring offer to voters.
Well, look, stop there, because you're leading me into everything. That's the Observer's front page. Right, Starmer lacks a clear sense of purpose, which is fascinating, from a left-leaning politician to a left-wing publications. What's going on here? What's the story, first of all?
Well, the story is that John Cruddas has written a book to commemorate 100 years of the Labour movement, and he's basically pointing out that Starmer is a decent guy. He's a credible person. He's a lawyer. He's not some sort of person who he can't be trusted or believed in. But there's nothing particularly to hang your hat on with Starmer. He says he's a very difficult leader to reach. No one knows what he really truly stands for. And in terms of he also points out inequality. Has he really talked about inequality? Has he talked about economic policy, the philosophy of the Labour Party when it comes to Starmer's plan? So Crudders, very much on the left of the party, is really not buying the Starmer elixir. But the problem is, I mean, the Labour Party has got a great tendency, like all parties do, to try and lose elections, at least certain parts of the party have. But Starmer, look, he's brought the party a long way since 2019. He's been completely unelectable under Corbyn. So you've got to give Starmer credit for pulling the Labour Party, getting rid of that anti-Semitism issue, pulling it into a position where it could be electable.
Yes, and I suppose shaped by Tony Blair, and slightly Tony Blair light, you might argue.
It is light.
But under Tony Blair, there was really, strict parameters, wasn't there? There was great party unity, and perhaps that is what he's now delivering.
Yes, and also you kind of feel that there was an exasperation. When I was looking at X, as we must now call Twitter earlier, there was a lot of exasperation from Labour people saying, every time we're ahead, there are people, shooting us in the foot from our own side, a sort of circular firing squad. And I suspect Starmer and the Labour leadership this evening is like, can you guys just shut up and let the Tories get on with messing it up, rather than, throwing up these flares?
Well, I will say that under Blair, they had a long time to actually get their policy plan together. The first 100 days, you remember, independence of the Bank of England, they had it underpinned by a social political philosophy called the Third Way. Anthony Giddens at the LSE, he was director when I was there, had fleshed out this policy, which was basically capitalism with a human face, and they were going to open the spending taps in the second term. They had done a lot of heavy lifting and hard thinking. And you remember that pledge call that Labour came out with in '97?
Did it have 5 pledges on it?
I think it had 5 pledges on it. It was very easy to understand. But as Blair said, the situation that Starmer faces now is a lot more difficult than the situation he faced in '97, where the economy was actually doing a lot better.
Yeah, absolutely. Still a fascinating year ahead, has to be said, 2024.
Or an
exhausting
exhausting
first time I've had to say
year
it. Anyway, lots more still to come, including travel disruption for thousands of passengers after Eurostar today cancelled all trains because of unprecedented flooding in the Thames Tunnel. Take a look at that in more detail and what's to come as well in a moment.
I'm Martin Brunt, and I'm Sky's crime correspondent. My most memorable story was, and still is, the disappearance of Madeleine McCann.
Please, please do not hurt her. Please give our little girl back.
We aim to be the best and most trusted place for news.
For detectives, the first 48 hours after a murder are crucial in the search for clues. The public expects them to find Jill Dando's killer soon. The British detectives are planning to meet forensic experts, academics, and even witch doctors.
I remember the grimmest case, the Soham murders of schoolgirls Holly and Jessica. I felt I can't undo what's happened, but I can help explain it.
Ian Huntley was arrested and charged within a fortnight of the murders.
I've never murdered anyone. I've never raped anyone. What am I in jail for?
The parole board has to decide if Bronson needs to be kept locked up for the safety of the public. My biggest challenge was to persuade a jailed diamond thief to answer my letters. Martin Brunt, Sky News, at the Old Bailey.
Well, welcome back. You're watching the press preview with me once again, the broadcaster and commentator Ali Miraj and the writer and broadcaster Kate Bevan. Welcome back to both of you. So let's head to the front page of the Sunday Telegraph now, which talks about Eurostar's woes today. What will happen tomorrow? Well, we're told that all services are running, but there will be speed restrictions and presumably a backlog, Ali, as well.
There's going to be a very big backlog. There are 30,000 people that have been affected by this. It looks like this water in the tunnel. It looks like some sort of fire coolant system burst over there, and it's created absolute havoc. So 30,000 people affected, 41 different services. And this is clearly the time when people are trying to get back home after the Christmas period. New Year is upon us. It's going to put absolute things in havoc. People trying to potentially find accommodation in the capital overnight as well.
Just before New Year's Eve celebration.
Very difficult, where things are very, very busy in London anyway. So really a very difficult time on capping what's been quite a difficult week for people on the travel front.
And I know you know these routes well, don't you? So Ebbsfleet International, you know, in Kent seems to be where the problem is. And who's responsible for this?
Well, it seems like it's HS1, which is the company that sort of runs the infrastructure, and then South Eastern trains run on top of that, and the Eurostar trains run on top of that down to the Channel Tunnel. And, you know, it's this patchwork of who's responsible, who carries the can, bucks being passed. And the upshot is just this chaos. I mean, I know that route well because I've got a family in East Sussex. And when it runs, it's fantastic. But the whole Christmas period for travel has just been, you know, a mess of no trains on Boxing Day, you know, trains being cancelled, people not being able to get seats. And also I saw earlier today that people were booking flights to Paris and to Amsterdam, and prices were up to like £900 for a flight to Paris. So it's really a bit of a shambles this year.
And you talked earlier about no goodwill in the rota as well because of all the strike action we've been having. The old sense of broken Britain, you know, hitting international tourism.
Well, definitely. And it's not just Paris, but it's also the trains that are going to Brussels and Amsterdam as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's go on to strike action elsewhere, shall we? Which is the Observer, down the bottom of their front page. The strike action will sink Sunak's NHS waiting list vow. We've already seen that happening, haven't we, Ali?
Well, it is one of his things to reduce waiting lists, and there's 7.7 million people on the waiting list at the moment, and you're going to have a 6-day strike starting next week by junior doctors. Now, what they want is restorative pay by 35% pay increase, which I think is just not going to work right now. I understand where they're coming from. I have full sympathy with junior doctors and wanting to be paid a decent wage for the very difficult job that they do. But 35% is not a serious basis for negotiation. And I think what's going to happen here is that they're going to end up in a similar position to what the Royal College of Nursing ended up with, wasting a lot of time, many, many months. This has been going on since February, until a decision and an accommodation is reached. But the government should still be negotiating with them. They didn't take the 3% additional on top of the, I think it was 8% offer that they were given. They want 35%. They're playing hardball, but the people that are going to suffer here are patients, and a number of operations and scheduled appointments have been cancelled.
Yes, and I see the top of the Sunday Times, actually. Thousands of cancer patients had crucial hospital appointments cancelled at least 3 times last year. So we start to see the impact on that. We've only got a minute left. Kate, do apologise for moving on, which is the number in the Daily Star. 50 million drinks on New Year's Eve. That's quite a lot, isn't it?
But what you don't know is what's it been in previous years? Numbers are no good unless you've got something to compare them to. I used to work for the FT.
But I know this. In COVID years, the point is, it's
exactly.
That's why they're saying it's the wildest New Year's Eve for a decade.
Well, I shall be going to Ministry of Sound tomorrow with my nieces and nephews, my little nieces and nephews, for a daytime rave.
Oh, daytime.
So you'll be home in bed by midnight.
That's
so
all right.
Never too early to introduce the house music.
You can get home and watch me doing New Year's Eve, but not drinking tonight, I tell you anyway. See you both a little bit later on. Ali Miraj, Kate Bevan, thank you both very much indeed. Let's take a look at the not such great weather.
Warm memories wherever you go. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Well, staying unsettled, I'm afraid, into next year with prolonged rain, strong winds and hill snow tonight, then showers until more general rain returns for us late on Monday. So a windy start for most tomorrow, coastal gales in the south and the northeast, prolonged rain for the Northern Isles, showers for much of the west. Eastern Britain looks mainly fine. The morning will stay windy in the south with sunny spells and showers for most of us concentrated in the west, but northern mainland Scotland looks mostly OK.
The Northern Isles will see more general rain and coastal gales becoming largely confined to Shetland, temperatures much like today's. Then eastern Britain will see showers developing more widely during the afternoon, but there'll be little change elsewhere. The crucial midnight moment, just to let you know, in London and Edinburgh looks OK. And there's the picture for Monday.
The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Well, coming up next on Sky News at 11,000 stranded ahead of the new year after Eurostar trains are cancelled due to flooding. Delays expected tomorrow, but the service will resume. You'll be glad to hear.